cannot thank enough Swami Radhanath ji, Maharaj ji, for having come all the way to Puducherry to speak to Puducherrians, public officials, teachers, people from all kinds of professions.
The heart seeks only one thing: to love and to be loved.
The event is really blissful. Pondicherrians, we are lucky today. Thanks a lot for the Swamiji.
The whole atmosphere was very much charged by his presence.
It's something very introspective. I would like to go home. I would like to think about it. The journey within.
Radhanath Swamiji exuberates the joy. It was a wonderful experience and we look forward to having more of his interactions.
Amazing, really amazing.
It's a blessed day, a beautiful day, a blessed day. Pondicherry, more so Rajnivas, has been blessed today by the arrival of Maharaj Radhanath Swamiji. We welcome you, Maharajji, to this place where Pondicherry is being ruled by law, but you are here to rule this place by your love and compassion. Swamiji was known as Richard Slavin. That's what his parents put his name when he born in 1950 in Chicago. And it's a long travel. 67 long years he has traveled and reached this place. And this is a predestined and that is determined by God Almighty. And he has traveled 67 years to reach this place, to meet all of us and to share his rich wisdom and knowledge. I think he had a calling in his place of birth, Chicago, because I think Swami Vivekananda went all the way from India to reach Chicago and spoke about the spirit, the matter, the mind, and the divine spiritual man, and the brotherhood, the love and compassion to a place called Chicago. And I think that reverberated. Maybe the Richard Slavin has traveled a long way to become Maharaj and come here and bless us. People travel in search of wisdom. It's a beautiful world. God has created this world beautifully, and man has destroyed it by his destructive ways and means. People travel. Here is a beautiful place where Mr. Arvind Ghosh landed here. He had the spiritual vibe and he found out the great consciousness, the spirit man, the integral yoga. Pondicherry has a vibe. It attracts like a magnet. All intellectual minds are attracted towards Pondicherry. This is a place of rishis. Agastya was here. This was called once a Vedapuri. Vedapuri means it's a place of scriptures. The God's breathness, God's breathing is a Vedapuri. And today, Vedapuri is once again blessed by the arrival of Maharaj. People travel, as I was mentioning, and today and another 2 days we are going to celebrate Christmas, where wise men travel all the way from Eastern country to go to West Asia to see and look the prophet. We have the story of great minds moving towards reaching what God has destined. This is a this is a spiritual country where people come and realize what is their calling. People try to understand who I am. Am I a matter? Am I a mind? Am I a spirit? Like Sri Aurobindo says, the spirit looks through the matter's gaze, and the matter will reveal through spiritual blessings. So, matter and spirit, what is a dichotomy? What is a real thing? One has to search and find out, and you can find the answer. And here we have the great soul with us. He will lead us to understand what is the consciousness, what is in store for us to get and enjoy and be blessed to not only to us and to others, and be fruitful. I'm happy that today Hon'ble Lieutenant Governor has arranged for this beautiful meeting here. Maharaj has brought out 2 beautiful books. The first book is a international seller. It's a journey home. Well, this is a home. This is a home. People travel all over the world. There is the ultimate home here. Journey Home is a beautiful book, international seller. And today Rajnivas is blessed that another book is going to be released, The Journey Within. Everybody is trying to, which I was trying to tell you, everybody is trying to carry out a journey within ourselves. What is a journey? We will find out from the book. This beautiful book is going to be introduced today and released today, and we are blessed. I heartily welcome Honorable Lieutenant Governor, the team Rajnivas, respected Chief Secretary, respected Director General of Police, secretaries, senior officers of the administration, disciples from ISKCON, people from various faiths, Reverend Fathers are here. So we are all are seeking the wisdom. So it's a place where fusion takes place, minds meet, intellects meet, and work together for the betterment of mankind. So I once again welcome all of you for this beautiful evening, and thank you very much.
It is truly my honor and my pleasure to be with you this evening. This is the first time in my life I have had the fortune of visiting Puducherry. And I'm here exclusively due to the power of our Honorable Governor Kiran Bedi's love and compassion. Love is the greatest force, the greatest power. But it is so often forgotten. In my life, I have discovered a simple truth that has transformed my entire perception of the world and all my values. That all of our countless longings, our ever-changing desires, our inevitable frustrations, they have a single origin. We have forgotten the love that is dormant within our hearts. Anandamayo Bhyashat. Every living being part of the Supreme Divine, is seeking pleasure. Why? Why the little ant, the birds in the sky, the fish in the sea, every type of animal and all human beings of all races, of all religions, everyone is seeking pleasure. And so much effort goes to avoid pain. Why? Because pain interferes with our pursuit for pleasure. We all have that in common because, as the Gita explains, Mamaivam so jivaloke jivabhuta sanatana manashastan indriyani prakriti stani karishati. We are all part and parcel of the One Supreme. And therefore, we are Satchit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge, and Ananda, full of happiness. Now, there are so many varieties of happiness promised to us within this world. Things can give some degree of satisfaction to the senses and to the mind. But things can never give any fulfillment to the heart. The heart seeks only one thing: to love and to be loved. The origin of that love, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he taught, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Satya Kabunoi Sravanadi Sudichiti Koriyayudai. Every living being has love of God within their hearts. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata bhutanam dharmasya tadatmanam shajamyaham. The one Supreme Being has descended in many avatars as the founder of so many religions, paths of Dharma. And they are all ultimately to bring us to the point of discovering that love that is within our hearts, to feel God's infinite love, to be an instrument of that love in whatever we do. We may be mothers or fathers or engineers or professors. We may be politicians. We may be swamis. Those are all details. The true principle is how we are being instruments of that love that is within ourselves. In a couple days, it will be Christmas. I passed so many beautiful churches and cathedrals while I was driving through Puducherry. The first and great commandment Jesus taught was to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And what is the expression of that love? What is the testimony that we have that love? Not by how many verses we know or how many rituals we perform or how many followers we have. How we love our neighbor as ourself. Because when we understand the true nature of our own self, we see that Gita tells Sarva Yonisho Konteya Murteya Sabhavantiya Tasam Brahma Mahajonir Aham Bija Pratapita. Krishna tells, I am the father and the mother of all living beings. On the spiritual level, we are all brothers and sisters. Vidyavanaya sampane brahmani gabhihastani suni chaiva swapake cha pandita samadarshana. In the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells, the sign of a person who has true knowledge is that they see all living beings with equal vision. Whether one is from one religion or another religion, one color skin or another color skin, one caste or another caste, one sex or another caste, all occupations, whether one is a human being or an elephant or a cow or a dog or a cat. Wherever there's life, it is sacred. Wherever there is life is the presence of the Jivatma, a child of God. To live with compassion is the essence of Sanatana Dharma, because it is not only the expression of our prem, our spiritual love, but it is the means by which we can achieve it. That is called bhakti, bhakti yoga. When I heard this verse, in my long search, trying to find truth that I could give my life to, I thought, this is it. This is truly what I'm searching for. How to live in full with true compassion in whatever we do. Our Honorable Governor, dear mother, Kiran Bedi, she's like a mother of the city of Puducherry and India and the whole world. She asked me to speak about my journey, trying to find the simple truth. I'll begin my story December of 1970. At that time, I was just coming out of my teenage years, about 19. I was in a no man's land between Pakistan and the Hussainiwala border of India. I had traveled long distance. I was so eager. My heart's longing to reach India. And now I was just steps away. The only thing that was between me and the longing of my heart was one immigration agent. It was a temporary border post. It was usually at Amritsar, but they changed it for some reason due to some political situation. I handed her my passport. She looked at me. Very cold stare. Then she looked at my passport. She examined every page of my passport. Then with no emotions whatsoever, she asked me the one question I dreaded more than any others. How much money do you have? I had a little cloth bag, that's all. And I searched through it. It took about a minute or two. I had 26 cents in about 5 different currencies. When she saw that, she became so angry, outraged. You require minimum $200 to enter India. I said, but this is all I have. She said, you are rejected. I said, I've hitchhiked all the way from London 6 months coming here to find the treasures of your country. Please give me a chance. She replied, we have enough beggars in India. We don't want another one. Out from here. Go back to where you came from. You are rejected. I wouldn't take no for an answer. And she became very frustrated. she had the border security force put their guns toward me. And then she said, "Get out from here." Where could I go? I only had a one entry visa to Pakistan, so I couldn't go back there. I couldn't get in India. I sat under a neem tree and I prayed and I cried. What was I going to do? I approached her again and she became more angry. I went back to the neem tree and I decided in my heart, because in those days, this is 47 years ago, this month, there were no cell phones. There were no phone booths. There was no internet. I had no one to contact. I was just stuck in a no man's land. I decided I'm going to sit under this tree until they let me in India. About 6 hours passed. I was rejected about 5-6 times during that time. Finally, just before the sun was setting, a jeep came. And out from the jeep came a very tall military official. He had army uniform, as the immigration agent did. He was a Sikh with a beautiful turban. He was about in his 50s, older than my father. When they were about to make their shift in post, she was pointing to me, and I could see what she was saying from the neem tree. "Don't let that boy in unless he has $200. Then she got in the Jeep and drove away. I waited until her Jeep was out of sight, and I said very serious prayers. I approached the agent. He looked at me like, "Don't even ask." I put my passport on his little table. I said, "Please, let me come into India." He said, "I have already been ordered to reject you unless you show me $200. He said, "Go from here." I began to cry. And with a trembling voice, I revealed my heart. I asked him, "Please give me a chance. I've traveled all the way from London with no money, hitchhiking, through all of Europe." And as I was speaking to him, I was getting flashbacks of my journey. May I share some with you? In 1950, I was born in Chicago. There were no religious people around me where I grew up. There were people who went to churches and synagogues, but it was all more formalities and ritual. So I don't know where it came from, but in my heart as a childhood, I would just love to pray to God, especially in hard times. And because I came from a Jewish background, and many people hated me because of my minority religion, I wondered, why is there so much hate in the name of a loving God? Why is there so much arrogance in religions that teach that we should be humble. The meek shall inherit the kingdom of God and the earth. Either I have to reject religion forever for all the division and egoism and hatred and deaths that historically it has created, or there must be an essence at the core of every great spiritual path that's beautiful. That same essence. Somehow or other, I dedicated my mind, I must find that essence. I joined the civil rights movement in the 1960s when I was a teenager, marching and protesting with the African American people because they were being discriminated and they were forced to live in the poverty of the ghettos with no chance of getting out because of the color of their skin. And I worked with these people. My father went bankrupt and I had to get so many jobs. They were like my parents, my friends, my brothers. And yet America was telling, every day we pledged allegiance to the flag of America, where we proclaimed to the flag, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. But who's that all? I don't see it. I was looking for truth. I was looking for answers, not just out of curiosity, but out of desperation. My best friend Gary, in 1970, he said, I'm going to Europe for 3 months. You should come with me. I said, I don't have any money. He said, I don't either. He said, but our mutual friend, Frank, he's going to pay for both of us because he wants to go so much and he wants us to be with him. I said, okay, I'll go. So somehow or other, Frank bought us an airline ticket, $65 round trip to Iceland, and then a connection to Luxembourg. First night there, Frank was robbed. He had no money. He said, we have to go back. And I said, I don't really care about money. I just want to be here. So he left, and Gary and I stayed with nothing. So where were we going to go? One of my rituals is we'd stand on the road like this, waiting for a car to stop and take us. And the driver would say, where are you going? And I would say, where are you going? And he would say, I am going to Belgium. And I would say, God wants us to go to Belgium. So that's how we traveled, because we were on a spiritual search. And we didn't have a specific path, so we were looking for a path. So through Europe I was living in monasteries, I was going to synagogues and cathedrals, I was going to art museums, trying to study art, and I was going to forests and riversides, just to try to find truth through nature. Eventually, we lived on an island of Greece, Crete. And we lived in a cave, because caves are very economical. But it was really beautiful. Every day, before sunrise, I would climb a mountain and pray to God for direction. I meditated, because I learned different types of yoga meditation in my travels. I was studying different books. I was studying the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, the Upanishads, other books by various teachers. And one night, after many days of prayer, just as the sun was set, that day actually, I was crying for direction. I heard a saying, if you do not have something you're willing to die for, you have nothing meaningful to live for. That's what I wanted in life, that ideal. I prayed all day. My aspiration to find truth, which began like a little spark, it became a flame. Now it was a blazing fire. Nothing else mattered. And as the sun was setting, I heard a voice. It spoke 3 words. I knew if I follow what these 3 words are, my life will never be the same. It may not even exist very long. But I silently, from the core of my heart, I whispered into the sky, yes, I will. Those 3 words, go to India. India? How do I get there? I went back to the cave and Gary was sitting there. He would meditate and pray on the ocean side or the seaside. I said, something incredible happened to me today. He said, something incredible happened to me. I said, what happened? He said, you won't believe me. I said, please tell me. He said, at sunset, I heard a voice. I said, what did the voice say? He said, you won't believe me. I said, please tell me. What did the voice say? He said, it spoke 3 words. I moved very close to him. What was it? Go to Israel. I said, Gary, he told me to go to India. There was silence for about 20 minutes. We were both stunned. And then I said, at sunrise tomorrow, I'm leaving for India. He said, what? You have no money. You don't know anyone. You're alone. Hitchhiking through Europe is one thing. But hitchhiking through the Middle East? You are insane. It's dangerous. I said, I believe God is calling me to India. I must go. I cannot wait. The next morning at sunset, I left him. I hitchhiked through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Some of the most beautiful and horrible things of my life took place. I got terrible diseases. People tried to kill me. Some were so kind to me, some, they wanted to destroy me. And I had no protection except my prayer. From London to the border of India took me 6 months. I aged at least 30 years in those 6 months. When you realize you're totally vulnerable to forces that are way beyond your control, you're helpless. I learned to depend on that higher power of grace, God's grace. And somehow or other, I could feel the hand of God taking me through all of those situations. And here I was at the border of India. And I was crying and praying to this immigration agent. I've risked my life. I've given up all the comforts of an American home just to come to your country, to learn your culture, to find the spiritual treasures that are here, to be with the yogis and the rishis and the lamas and the sages. I promise you, if you just give me a chance, someday I will do something good for the people of India. He gazed at me. He stared at me with very piercing, immigration-like eyes. It looked like he was reading my mind and reading my heart. And then his eyes filled with tears. And he spoke. He said, "Sometimes a man must follow his heart. My commanding officer ordered me to reject you. But I am going to give you the chance that you are crying for." Then he stamped my passport. He was very large, I was very small. He was very powerful, I was very vulnerable. He put his hand on my head. He said, "My child, I bless you that you will find what you are crying for. Welcome to India." I crossed the border. By that time, the sun had set. It was getting dark. And this Husainwala border near Firozpur in Punjab, it was very lonely place. It wasn't a town or a city. It was just a forest and a field. And I was walking through these agricultural fields. And the stars were coming in the sky and the moon. I was looking at the leaves and the trees and the crops growing from the ground. And my mind, my heart was embracing everything. I had no idea whether to go left or right. But I never felt so at home in my life. I really, not figuratively or symbolically, I actually felt when I entered India that I was being embraced by my mother. After some time, I somehow or other got to Old Delhi, and there was a yoga conference being advertised. So I went. I spent about a week there, and I met many different yogis, Swami Satchidananda, J. Krishnamurti, Swami Rama, many others. They gave very nice time and teachings to me. And then I went to the Himalayas. Because after all, that's where yogis are supposed to go. That's all I knew. I went by third-class train. That was the way of hitchhiking in India. You just jump through the window and it's so crowded, no ticket collectors could get in. Before they put bars in the windows. So from Haridwar, I walked to Rishikesh. I met Swami Chidananda Saraswati of the Shivananda Yoga Society. And then I took a little boat across the Ganga because it was very lonely on the other side, on the eastern bank of Mother Ganga at that time. And I found a completely secluded place. I sat on the bank of the Ganga, and I prayed and I meditated. What am I going to do? Where am I going? I meditated for several hours. Then out from the forest came this person. He had a golden complexion. He had long gray hair and beard, flowing clothes rippling in the breeze of the Ganga. And he walked up to me. I was just sitting in the sand all alone. I'll never forget this moment. He said, "You do not know me, but I know you. I have been observing your sincerity. Now take off all your Western clothes, and I will give you the clothes of a sadhu." I asked, "What is a sadhu?" He said, it's a homeless person who was wandering around seeking the truth and God. And I thought, that sounds just like me. So he gave me 2 strips of cloth, just cotton sheets. And he told me to take my pants and my shirt and my underpants and offer them to Mother Ganges. They were the only clothes I had, because in different places, Afghanistan, and I had to run for my life, and I had to leave all my whatever little I had behind. So when you only have one set of clothes that you're wearing for months, it becomes your identity. I didn't realize it till I was asked to put them in Ganga. The clothes were swept away, and I put on the sadhu robes. And then he whispered something in my ear. He said, "The Ganga will become your mother. Someday you will understand this." And then he walked away back into the forest, and I never saw him again. But I sat in a rock inside the Ganga for a month, from sunrise to sunset, meditating and praying, but ultimately, I just became a student of Ganga. I was learning so many lessons. Seek and ye shall find, it is said. If we're seeking, if we're open to truth, it's amazing how God could speak through so many ways to us. I was watching the winter dress of Mother Ganga. The water was swirling and it was going around rocks, waves and whirlpools. It was so beautiful. Very fast rushing current. And I was thinking, this beauty, even the greatest artists in human history cannot capture this beauty. The sound, the fragrance, the sight. But yet this beauty, at every moment, it's appearing and disappearing. It's coming and it's going. Ganga's teaching me the nature of life. Nothing is permanent. Everything and everyone in this world is going to be taken away from us. Our youth. Then I was 19 or 20 years old. Now I'm 67. What happened? Cannot buy back a moment lost for all the money in the world. But the current of Mother Ganga is permanent. And similarly, all the superficial manifestations of the waves of life are always changing. But the current of truth of who we are, our relationship with God and our true relationship with nature and each other is eternal. If only we could go deeper. That journey within. Then we find a truth of our true self, a truth of a love that cannot be disturbed by any of the distractions of this world. I looked to the north and saw Mother Ganga flowing by. And I looked to the south and saw her on her journey to the ocean. I was thinking, Mother Ganga, she is flowing from Gomukh, Gangotri, from the peaks of the Himalayas, down through the mountains, through the plains. And there's so many obstructions. There's mountains. There's huge rocks. Somehow or other, the Ganga either flows around them, or over them, or under them, but nothing can obstruct her flow to the sea. And I was thinking, if we can, like the Ganga, however many obstructions may come between myself and enlightenment, give me the strength to never give up. I saw on that rock, sometimes there were trees floating by me, sometimes leaves, sometimes flowers, sometimes a dead buffalo, a couple times human corpses. I was thinking, what am I supposed to learn from this? The message that most of these objects, they're going to get washed to the bank of the Ganges, and that will be the end of their journey. In the similar way, on the spiritual path, there will be so many distractions. There will be so many temptations, so many fears, so many insecurities that can divert us from our goal. But if somehow we remain within the current of the grace of God, our gurus and our paths, then it will take us to the Karuna Sindhu, to the sea of God's grace. In the journey home, I discuss more lessons that I learned sitting on that rock in silence than I learned from all my teachers and all my professors throughout my education in America. And after several weeks, I heard the beautiful mantra that later I was going to dedicate my life to. I first heard in the beautiful song of Mother Ganga. She did become my mother. From there I traveled north in the Himalayas. One day I was at Dev-Prayag. It was early morning, before the light. I went to take my bath in Mother Ganga, where the Alaknanda and Bhagirathi meet. And as soon as I stepped in the water, I was swept away. The current was so fast. You can't bathe there without holding on to a chain as hard as you can. And suddenly I was in this helpless current, the same Ganges. And suddenly I felt a grip on my arm. And this very large, strong man pulled me out of the Ganges and put me on the bank. Then started chanting mantras to protect me. He was a sadhu. His name was Kailash Baba. And he became like a father to me. I was introduced to him by my mother, Ganga. It was at that time of great need, at the time of life and death, that I actually met him. He taught me so many things. He taught me how to live like a sadhu in the forest, what to eat, what's good, what's bad. how to mix with other sadhus. That's very, I don't like to say this, but there's a lot of politics. And you really have to address everyone in the proper way. Otherwise, so many various astras come at you. He taught me how to live among the neighbors. Snakes, scorpions, leopards, elephants, wild boars. He taught me this is their home. If they want to kill you, there's nothing you can do. And he taught me a secret. If you consider yourself in any way superior to them, or if you have the slightest fear of them, the snakes are going to bite you. The leopards are going to eat you. He said, he didn't say, he taught, you have to honor the spirit, the soul that gives them life as your brother. If you have that respect for them and keep your distance out of respect, they will never harm you. Now, this is a crash course because they were there. We were sleeping under trees in the middle of the forest or on a riverbank. But because I was with Kailash Baba, just being with him, I actually didn't have fear. And I could see all these different animals and plants and everyone and see them as my brothers. And I was thinking, this is the power of the association of a saintly person. They actually give us confidence that we don't have. They help us to see something that we can't see. After some time, I moved on to live with many other different sadhus and yogis and rishis and lamas. And I'm going to end real soon. But I was requested to tell a particular story in this regard. When I lived December, January, February, March in Himalayas at that time, it was Kumbh Mela in Prayag, Allahabad. And all the yogis and sadhus were going to Kumbh Mela. And I had just arrived, and I had my little cave in the forests above Rishikesh. And I said, what is this Kumbh Mela? They said, you must come with us, we will take you there. I said, well, tell me about it. And they said, there will be 20 million people there. And I said, I will stay here. But a seed was planted, and I really wanted to go to Prayag because I heard how it was such a holy place, Prayagraj. So I was in that area of India, and I got on a third-class train, and I got out at the station, and it was summer. I think it was the month of May. It was very hot, and it was about noontime. And I asked some sadhus, where is Prayag? Where is the Sangam? And they said, this way. So I started walking along the bank of Ganga. But the sand was burning hot. It was literally hot as fire. And I had no shoes. Because months before, when I was living with Naga Babas, I sat next to their fire with these little rubber shoes on, and they chastised me. So I threw my shoes in the forest, and I never had shoes since then. But I couldn't walk on the sand. But somehow or other, I did it. It was over an hour. And finally, I saw Yamuna coming. She had come down from the Himalayan peaks, through the Himalayan mountains, down through the plains, going through so many holy places. And there she was having her meeting with Ganga. And the goddess Saraswati was coming up from above, from below. I felt so happy. But because it was such a hot summer day, I was the only human being to be seen anywhere in that area. I was sitting on the bank of the Ganga, and something wonderful happened. Just above my head, in the cloudless sky, was a hawk, a large bird with brown and gold and white wings. And that hawk had piercing yellow eyes that were intensely looking down as if it were about to attack. Beak was hard, curved and pointed, and its claws were going in and out. And he was circling above me, closer and closer, until he was just about 15 feet above my head. And there was nobody else there. So I was thinking, God save me. Suddenly, head first right into the water. Went underwater, and I saw a skirmish. Then the hawk emerged from the water with a fish in his claws. The fish was about a foot long, and it was just a few feet in front of me. And I looked at that fish's eyes. That little fish looked so bewildered. It was flapping and flapping and flapping, and the hawk just flew away into the forest with the fish. I was thinking, what am I supposed to learn from this? Perhaps we're all like that fish. That fish was just swimming around, maybe with family members, maybe with friends, maybe with the community, going upstream, downstream, looking for some food. That's the occupation of fish. Having children. Suddenly, least expectation, the hawk of fate ripped it out of its environment. And similarly, we go on with our lives, but we do not know that at any moment, crisis, death, emergencies can happen. We read it in newspapers, internet. We see it, we hear about it. But it's hard to come to grips that it can happen at any moment. The yellow-eyed hawk of fate. But then I was thinking, if that fish was swimming deeper, the hawk could not reach it. Similarly, this journey within. If we go deeper into our own spiritual path, if we actually connect with the soul, which is accessible and available to everyone, anyone, then the experience, the identification, and the fulfillment of that is so deep that whatever may happen in this world, we remain satisfied. We remain detached. And at the same time, from that place, we have the greatest power to perform our duty and make changes. Because we're motivated by compassion. After seeing that, I went into the Ganga. It was so nice to get out of the heat. And I was so enthusiastic, I may never come to Prayag in my life again. I want to stay in this river and get purified as long as I can. And I swam all the way across to the other side. There was nobody there. And when I got to the other side, I crawled out onto the bank and began to sink. I was being swallowed by Mother Earth. It was quicksand. I was sinking lower and lower, and somehow or other I grabbed a bush, and I was pulling and pulling, and then the bush got uprooted. If you want to know how I survived that, you can read The Journey Home. But somehow or other I got out of that quicksand. It's a very philosophical and emotional story. And I came back into Mother Ganga. Her current was so strong. She was pushing me back to the quicksand. I was swimming against her current. I was swimming. I went about a foot, and then I was pushed back a foot, and I went a foot and pushed back a foot. I went a couple feet and pushed back a foot. It was a long distance. I was swimming and swimming and swimming until I was totally exhausted. My arms could hardly move anymore. And I was not making any progress whatsoever. And I had to decide, am I going to die being drowned by the Ganga, or am I going to die in the quicksand? And I decided Ganga's better. Just at that moment, a distance away, there was a boatman. I remember he had a red turban on. He was just rowboat. And I was crying. He was a distance. I was calling out for his help and calling out and screaming as I was getting pushed back. And then he looked at me and went like this. And then just kept going and left me there to drown. At that point, I realized that I will die. And I was pulled under the water. And under the water, one of the greatest blessings of my life, the same mantra that I heard from Mother Ganga months and months before in Rishikesh came into my mind. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As I chanted, just in my mind, I felt peace. I felt that there is no death. And then my mind was clear. I thought, why did that fisherman go like that? Now I know. I was so frantic to save my life. I was in such a passionate condition. I couldn't understand him. He was telling me, Mother Yamuna's flowing very peacefully this way. Mother Ganga's flowing forcefully this way. You're going against her. He said, flow with the current of Yamuna. So I just changed my direction. And I went about a mile down. As I was going, I was thinking, I left my passport at the Sangam. But I was thinking, I just received the visa of this mantra that took me beyond death. And hours later, I finally came back to that place. And by that time, it was like sunset. And there were hundreds and hundreds of people taking their baths. And my little cloth bag with my passport was there. I sat in the sand. I was thinking, this same sand, at noontime, it was blazing hot, causing me so much pain. And the same type of sand across the river was sucking me down, quicksand, to suffocate me. And now the sand is so refreshing and cool and nice. Are we not all like that sand? How we are influenced by people and environment around us? According to the circumstances that we're in, we could be angry and envious, or we could be kind and compassionate. We could feel peace, we could feel total unrest. How important our environment is. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Sastra Koi, Lavamatra Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. I learned later that association with holy people, and I was meditating in my own way on this principle, when we associate with holy people, it brings the good out in us. When we're in an environment, whether it's our puja room, whether it's a mandir, whatever, a holy place, it brings the good out in us. How important it is in our lives to learn to bring the good out, the divine out in others. As I was thinking like this, I remember that little fish getting swept away by the hawk. How important these lessons are. The university of life. And just as I was thinking like this, the sun was setting, and above all the little birds, there was a great hawk flying by me, like the emperor of the sky. When I wrote this book, The Journey Home, I called my father. Just a few days ago, he turned 94. But this was about 10 years ago. I asked him, "How are you doing?" He would always say, "I'm fine." No matter what wrong would happen, he never wanted me to worry. I remember one time, I said, "How are you, Father?" I was calling him from Delhi. I was about to go to Bharsana in Vrindavan. And he said, "Oh, I'm fine." And my mother got on the phone and said he just had a major heart attack and he's going for open heart bypass, quadruple bypass surgery tomorrow. But he doesn't want you to worry. Don't tell him I told you. But when you go to Vrindavan, pray to Krishna for him. So this day I said, "How are you?" And he said, "Terrible." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I read your book before I went to sleep and I couldn't sleep all night." I said, "It was that bad?" He said, "It was worse." I said, "Which part did you read?" He said, "You were being sucked down by quicksand and you were being drowning in the Ganges." I said, "But Father, that was 40 years ago. I'm safe." And he said something to me I'll never forget. He said, "You do not understand the heart of a father." He said, "If you would have died then, your mother and I would have never, ever heard anything of what happened to you. We would have lived the rest of our lives and died what happened to our son." My journey, it's a long story, but took me to Vrindavan. I was going somewhere else, but somehow or other, by a power beyond my own, I landed in Vrindavan at 5 o'clock in the morning on a third-class train. I just got out to drink some water at the railway station, and when I was trying to get back in, it was so crowded, I was pushed off, and I was trapped in this unknown place. And I asked some people, where am I? Said, this is Mathura, Krishna's birthplace. And today is Janmashtami. And they said, we will take you to the birth site. So I went. And I decided to leave after 3 days. I was in Vrindavan, sleeping on the bank of the Jamuna. And when I woke up in the morning, I had typhoid fever. I could not move. So I was trapped in Vrindavan. And living with the people and understanding the concept of bhakti, devotion, understanding the concept of prema, the path that's especially directed toward awakening in a personal way the ecstasy of the love of God that's within our heart. Offering that to Krishna and offering that to the world through everything we do. And it was in Vrindavan that many months later I met my guru, Srila Prabhupada. I'll never forget, he was sitting there. I would sit with him for many hours every day. He was sitting in a room with just 5 or 6 people. And someone asked him, are you the guru for the world? And he looked down with such humility. His eyes were tearful. And then he looked up. He said, no. I'm just the servant of everyone. That's all. And I was thinking, that's what I want. That type of selfless love is what I'm yearning for. And that is, after hearing his talks and his message, I decided to give my life. I heard him speak a particular verse from the Srimad Bhagavat. Savaipong sang parodharamo yatho bhakti radhoksha jaya hoitaki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. There are many forms of dharma. Sometimes dharma means occupation, sometimes dharma means nature, sometimes dharma means religion. But the highest dharma, Savaipong som parodharma, the supreme dharma, is that which awakens from our hearts unmotivated, uninterrupted, loving service to the One Supreme. It's not about this religion or that religion. The true essence of Hindu faith that I discovered includes all others. And in this age of Kali, the chanting of these beautiful mantras and God's names can help us to awaken that. Many years later, I came back to the West. When I left home, I was a very activist, social reformer with long hair, student. When I came back, I was an ascetic of a spiritual path my parents never heard of. I was telling them about Krishna and Rama, and they were thinking, what has happened to our son? But because I didn't try to force anything, and they tried to force, but they couldn't, we just appreciated each other. We loved each other despite our differences, even though they couldn't really understand. And I'm going to tell one more little story. In 1989, my mother and father first came to India just to see what is our son doing. When they met all of you, the people of India, their hearts were transformed. I could get them to be tolerant, but I couldn't get them to appreciate. But when they came to India, experienced the atmosphere of India in the association of spiritually sincere people, they were transformed. They became proud of me. They made the best friends in their whole lives were now in India. When they went back to America, my brother had 2 children. My brother Jewish, his wife was Catholic. Should we baptize in church or should we baptize in synagogue? My brother and his wife were saying. My mother and father said, you should get baptized in Hare Krishna temple. Your brother will do it. So all the children, all the grandchildren, I did a ceremony, kirtan, and I sprinkled Ganga water and Yamuna water from Prayag on them. And everyone was happy. And every child, more and more relatives were coming because they heard how nice it was. Anyways, my mother came to India about 3 times, and she passed away. I was in Mumbai when she passed away. But I remember, this is a secret. She told me to keep it a secret. One day I was sitting with her. This is when she was still healthy. She said, all my children I love equally, but I'm most proud of you because of what you do with your life. And that moved me so much. And my father would tell me, I'm equally love all my children. But now that I'm getting old, what you do is exciting to me. Because my other children just do what I used to do. So there was a real connection. And when my mother passed away, she told the family, and they all agreed, that they would do something no one in the history of my entire family, going back through generations, centuries, no one has ever done, to cremate her body. Because Jewish people, they bury. She wanted that her body be cremated so that I could take her ashes to India. And my whole family, my brothers, my father, all agreed. When I came to India with her ashes, we were having a pilgrimage in Mayapur, Navadvip, the holy place where Sri Chaitanya appeared in this world. And there was about 3,000 of our devotees. And we were going to different holy places. And I said, if anyone wants, I'm going to submerge my mother's ashes. So 3,000 people were on the banks of Ganga. And they were all singing. Many were crying and praying and chanting this beautiful Maha Mantra and other prayers. It was a beautiful kirtan. And I performed rituals on the bank of Ganga. Then I brought her ashes in a pot. I went up to my neck in the Ganga and I said a prayer. And then with that prayer, I offered the ashes of her body into Mother Ganga. And I was thinking at that time, this is Dharma. This is Bhakti. My material mother, who gave birth to this body, who nourished me through my whole childhood with so much love, and sacrifice. And Ganga is my spiritual mother, who nourished me with so much wisdom and saved my life in so many ways. Now, my material mother and my spiritual mother are becoming one. Bhakti is when our material life and our material relationships become completely spiritualized. Our material occupation becomes completely spiritualized when connected with prema, with devotion. When somehow or other, by God's grace, they are integrated. And I said a prayer, choked up with emotion. Mother Ganga, please take my mother's spirit, her soul, back to the sea of Sri Krishna's grace. When I was just finishing writing this book, I was telling our Honorable Governor, Srimati Kiran Bedi ji, and she wanted me to tell this tonight. I was writing the journey home in so many different places, because I have to travel, and whenever I had time, I would write something else. I happened to be on a high mountain in Viareggio, in Italy. I just gave a lecture in a forest, and about 150 Italian people came to the lecture, and they had some nice prasad. The house that I was staying in was almost 600 years old. Same house, just made out of brick, not rocks, and big beams of wood. And I was in the upstairs. There was a ground floor and a first floor. And it was night. The moon was shining in through the window. Birds were singing. And because I just gave a lecture, I was very excited. So I couldn't sleep. Just like tonight, it'll be like that. So I was thinking I should finish this book. So I saw a suggestion from a person. We were just finishing the editing and everything. At the very end of the book. This might be a good place to remember your mother. She didn't know the story of it so much. She didn't know anything about it. She just, in the book, it talks about the selfless love of my mother and how it influenced my life. And I began to type this story about offering her ashes to Mother Ganga. And as I was typing it, I was weeping profusely. So if you read that book, understand that those paragraphs, I literally rained tears upon it, remembering how God's grace can harmonize and bring everything together. The Journey Within is a book about the lessons, the wisdom, the teachings on the path of bhakti that I discovered in my travels. And that day by day, so many gifts of God help us to have a better understanding how we could love, how we could serve, how we could find true happiness within ourselves and share that happiness with others. Bhakti is like a foundation of an integrity, a character, a love, a compassion, a peace, a courage that's within us. It's the nature of the soul. And then according to whatever our occupation may be, according to what our duties in life will be, we build them on that foundation of love. Love is personal. It's the highest reality. I thank you very much.